Rawson Twitchell runs inside. Rawson Twitchell into the second level, the 10, the 5, touchdown Butte County.
It's Friday in Idaho, and it's time for another edition of Gem State Game Day.
Simmons to throw. Going deep down the field. He's got a man isolated. Did he catch it? He did. In traffic. What a grab by Kai Wheeler.
Before you head out tonight to cheer on your favorite team, get caught up on the latest news, notes, and previews of tonight's gridiron action.
Here's a snap, and it's intercepted at the 10-yard line. That's Bodie Brackenberry. Jackalow sniffed it out.
Gem State Game Day is brought to you by Idaho Central Credit Union, your local Toyota dealers, and Project Filter.
This one's going to go all the way. 70 yards, no flag, touchdown Valley View. Austin Belknap, 70 yards to the house. Buckle up. Here we go.
That's right. Welcome in to the quarterfinals edition of Gem State Game Day here on IdahoSports.com. That's right. We couldn't wait any longer. Monday night, we are coming to you live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, X account, and Instagram account. We want to hear from you, the fans, tonight. If you are lucky enough to be joining us live, go ahead and hit the like button and share this. That helps everybody who isn't watching live find it a little easier on replay. Also, if you have something you want to say, throw it in the comments. We'll throw it up on the screen. We really want to have a conversation with you, the fans. Of course, we normally do this on Tuesday nights during the postseason, but with tomorrow night being the presidential election and several, statewide election races also happening, we figured probably not a good programming idea. So we'll go tonight, a little Monday night Gem State Game Day. And then if you are tired of the political stuff tomorrow night, you can always watch the replay of Gem State Game Day anytime at the IdahoSports.com. Again, YouTube channel, Facebook page, X account, and Instagram account. Let's introduce you to our panel. Again, we will go in alphabetical order. This is the host of our Magic Valley Prepcast, our District 4 weekly show where we talk about District 4 athletics. He was the guy that called that incredible catch by Kai Wheeler from Coeur d'Alene High in the intro. That was in last year's state championship game. Let's bring him on. It's Scott Burton. Yo, what's up, Scott?
Hey, Brandon. Just enjoying a Ram victory over the Sea Chickens last night and some quick prep work, turn around, get ready for a very fast Magic Valley or Gem State Game Day. So
Yeah,
it is like hit the ground running tonight for sure.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody that could be here on such a short turnaround. Only the elections only come once every 4 years for the presidential race. So I figured for one night we could, accommodate. So,
There's no better theater sometimes than election night. So
yeah,
I'll be glued.
Yeah, for sure. Let's bring in our next panelist. You know him as one of the two hosts of the Fighting Tater show here on IdahoSports.com. He was also the guy with that signature buckle up. Here we go. Call in the intro. That Austin Belknap touchdown run from Valley View High School last year at the Battle on the Blue. It is Lucas Gebhardt. What's up, Lucas? Oh, Lucas, your mic is muted.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I did a podcast.
We're off to a great start. No, but just so you know, the Fighting Tater show, we're going to do a lot. We are going to go up against the presidential election tomorrow, not because it's our choice, but because college football playoff rankings come out tomorrow at 5:00, and we're going to do a live show as those are released at 5:00 tomorrow night. So probably some early polls closing out East, and you're not going to know who wins the presidential election at 5:00. So hop back on and we'll talk about some CFP rankings while those early votes are coming in.
We may not know by 5:00 next week who's won the presidential election.
No kidding. Yeah.
True.
Yeah. Hey, real quick in the chat, here's Sam Buffington, our great IdahoSports.com fan up here in North Idaho. Before you guys start, can we just congratulate Scott and his Dodgers? LA Dodgers won the World Series last week. Seahawks should have won, by the way, but that's a different story for later. Scott, it's been a nice week for you.
Yes, it has. It's been a really good week. I'm so happy to be a LA fan right now. Good times.
Everything's coming up Burton, it seems like. All right, let's bring in our next expert. You know him as the co-host of the East Idaho Prepcast, and really the guy that dominated the airtime last week because there were so many East Idaho teams. Let's welcome in Sean Kane. Yo, what's up, Sean?
Hi, I'm a Bears, Bulls, White Sox fan. Let's just introduce the next person.
That sounds like a good plan. Last and certainly least, it is the general manager here at IdahoSports.com. Was having some significant mic issues in our pre-show sound check. We'll see if he's gotten that rectified. Paul Kingsbury.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well played. Well played.
Bullying me pretty hard. I don't appreciate it. This could be my last day working for IdahoSports.com.
Okay, guys.
Okay,
Our plan.
Let's have a good show.
Our plan is working. Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right, guys. Let's start at the very top with the Class 6A postseason. We'll give you kind of an updated bracket, and then we will kind of go game by game and just kind of give our quick thoughts on how we think the quarterfinals might go. But here is that updated bracket. And we finally get to see the 4 teams that got first round buys: Rocky Mountain, Rigby, Coeur d'Alene, and Eagle. They will all host quarterfinal games this weekend after having a first round bye. Kuna, Post Falls, Middleton, and Madison were your 4 opening round winners. Let's just start with the very first game on the bracket line. It was a shootout Saturday night at Donna Larson Park. Kuna Cavemen take out the Timberline Wolves 45-37. Paul, as soon as this game went final, you in our little group chat that we have, you texted, "How about the Cavemen living to fight for another day?" Okay, Paul, I set that up for you. If you're paying attention, you're not. Lucas, talk to me about this unit Timberline.
I was having internet issues like we're having this morning in my meeting. So I was gone. You just couldn't see it because the graphics up.
Jeez, I kind of feel like I kind of feel like Bryce Young out here. I got nobody to throw it to. Lucas was on mute, a muted mic. Paul's not even paying attention. Somebody please make a play here. Lucas. Timberline outgained Kuna in yardage in this game, and yet the Cavemen found a way.
Yeah, they found a way, and without their starting running back, too. You see a guy there at Dallas Konzik, who's one of their backup running backs for Kuna. How about him? 22 carries, 158 yards, 2 touchdowns for him. Kuna, 45 points on 9 completions. I mean, that just shows you how this team likes to run the ball. They played well defensively, especially a couple weeks ago against Meridian. And they kind of back it up with, you just see the 2 polar opposite differences between these 2 offenses. Timberline throws it 55 times. Kuna throws it 11 times. But the running team ended up winning this one. So Hudson Lewis, nice to see him with 12 catches and 4 touchdowns. He had a heck of a game, but the Kuna Cavemen, the offense, the running game, just too much for Timberline. So it'll be exciting to see them. They just keep moving on, win and survive in advance for the Cavemen.
Yep. Kuna now 5-5 on the season. They are back to 500. And now they get a very interesting quarterfinal battle as we take a look at the bracket here again. They are going to have to, now they won't have to travel far, Paul, but man, the opponent is going to be difficult as they've got to take on the big bad Rocky Mountain Grizzlies.
You know, I'm proud of them for getting this far. I think everybody is, but Coach Bo, they call him, he has gotten them way further than I think anyone expected them to. I picked up my daughter, who's a sophomore at Kuna. I picked her up earlier tonight, took her to dance. First thing she said was, "So do you think Cuna's going to beat Rocky?" And I went, "No." And she's like, "Yeah, I don't either." Loves her team, but I guess the Kingsbury's a realist. I mean, they have gone further than anybody thought. I think it's the first step in what's going to be a good program, but Rocky Mountain is Rocky Mountain. They're going to be tough in this round and the next.
Yep. Kuna aiming for their first trip to the semifinals since 2019. They were a 4A school back then, won the championship that year. But yes, Kuna is the only team remaining in the 6A playoffs that has a negative point differential. As you see there, 19.7 points per game scored, 26.2 allowed. And Rocky Mountain has so many weapons and so many high octane Division I athletes. Kimball Turner, you've got the quarterback who's a high level player as well. So, I mean, Rocky Mountain, and then defensively, I mean, that front seven is one of the fiercest in the state. So yeah, Rocky Mountain looks pretty good. Scott Kreiner in his second year leading this program should advance to the semifinals. I think we all are in agreement on that one. Let's go to the next game on the bracket line in the opening round. This was, hey, Post Falls finally got over the hump, guys. They had gone 0-4 in first round playoff games at home the last 4 years. They finally break through and get a win 49-21 over the Bohr Alliance. Look at the totals for Post Falls, guys. They had 2 running backs go for 150 plus. Devin Burton, 174 and 3 touchdowns. Brandon Felix, 152 and 2 touchdowns. Scott, when you can run the rock like that, you're going to be a tough opponent to beat.
Well, you're going to see something in common with a lot of these teams we're talking about. It's going to be controlling the clock and ball control. You know, I mean, you get these teams in high school that just fling the ball around. There's not many of them that make it to the end. It's, can you run the football? And obviously this is a team in Post Falls that can, you know, put a couple of people back there. And you're going to see that in some of these teams that we talk about. 2 running backs, 3-headed monster running backs. I mean, it's going to be a common theme in high school football. You better be able to run the football.
And for Bora, a season that started so promisingly. I mean, they were 5-2 at one point. They kind of end on a 3-game slide, and Dylan Lukengay ends up throwing for 264 yards and a touchdown in the setback. And now Sean, Post Falls gets to travel down to Rigby for the quarterfinals. This is a Rigby team that lost 2 games very early on, one to Coeur d'Alene in the season opener. Common opponent for both Post Falls and Rigby here. 2 veteran coaches, Armando Gonzalez in his 8th year at Rigby, Blaine Bennett in his 9th year at Post Falls. Trojans looking for their first trip to the semifinals since 1995, Sean. But man, this Rigby team is tough.
Yeah, it's going to be a very tough road through Rigby, and Rigby only had 2 home games all year, so this is Rigby's 3rd home game. They're going to be fired up. They're going to be ready to go. You know, Luke Flowers, and
Jake Flowers.
Yeah, Jacob.
Luke.
Yeah, you threw me off. I was going to say Jacob, and then Luke Flowers was before, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, Jacob Flowers, Amani Morel. Rigby team can run the veer. Good luck stopping them. Like, they could honestly run the ball every play, and you'd be hard to find many teams that could stop it. But then they have Flowers back there at quarterback who can sling it when needed, and it'll be a very tough game for Post Falls.
Yeah, and Rigby, this is a battle of the Trojans, right? Post Falls Trojans, Rigby Trojans, although Rigby fans will tell you this time of year, they become the Rigby Red Devils. That's what they used to be called back in the 50s and 60s, and it's kind of a little throwback thing they do every year in the postseason. Yeah, they have special little decals for their helmets and everything. So the Rigby Red Devils, that's the insider info there. Here's Chris Hunt in the chat, guys. Rigby Nation is excited to get our 3rd home game of the season. Hashtag Road Warriors. And there you go. Hashtag Red Devils. That's what I was talking about. Yeah, Scott, as an athletic director, I think you would find this funny. Rigby had 2 home games this year. The first one was homecoming. The second one was senior night. And now home game number 3 is going to be their playoff opener.
You know, there's from an administrator standpoint, it is kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, it's less that you have to deal with and set up for. But then again, if you are, you know, you have a good football team like Rigby, yeah, you want them home, because I'm looking at it from a completely different standpoint. Those gates are going to be huge. People show up for Rigby. Doesn't matter what it is. You could have Rigby, you know, checkers, and you would have to get a big enough place to house everybody. It was like state basketball a few years ago. I think it was Rigby and Madison were playing in the semifinals and had to lock people out. And boy, that didn't sit very well. But a team like Rigby, man, a home game is huge because they show up, and this is going to be a packed house.
Yep. Chris Hunt says forks up for those Rigby Red Devils. Matthew Hamilton says, hey, Post Falls Moving Company coming to town. I like it. I love the early banter.
I just want to throw this in for Rigby too. Rigby the last couple of years, and I know we're looking ahead here, but I think, Rocky obviously a favorite, Rigby probably a favorite in this one too. Looking ahead, this is a battle-tested Rigby team on the road and coming to the SIC. To play these SIC teams on the road late into the playoffs going into November. They did it a couple of years in a row on the way to state championships. They would come to Rocky if they win this game this week and if Rocky wins next week. Rocky hasn't been tested all year. They'd been running through every single opponent, and you have a possible matchup where this is a battle-tested, road-tested Rigby team coming to Boise to play the number one team in the state. Where have we seen that before? Just topic for next week. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, that's what we call a tease in the industry. And yeah, Rigby definitely has challenged themselves with their schedule this year, the Road Warriors for sure. All right, the third game from the opening round last week, guys, featured Highland and Middleton. And oh boy, guys, what a fun one this was. In an absolute downpour, Middleton 6, Highland 3. Final score, no joke. We had lots of people asking, okay, what is that, like a first quarter score? Did you guys make a mistake? No, that was the final. The only scoring, guys, Paxton Johnson, 45-yard field goal for Highland. Tyler Robinson hit 2 field goals for Middleton from 27 and 43 yards out. Sean, for a Highland team, the defending state champions, this is not the way they wanted their postseason, their title defense to go. It just seemed like they ran out of steam as the season went along.
Yeah, they dealt with injuries and things through the season, and I feel like they never got a complete set of their team all year, and you only kind of got to see parts of it. But it was super tough. Last week I was going to say Highland does a really good job of going to Boise and winning those first or second round playoff games, but unfortunately this year I just don't think they had enough offensive power to do it. And there wasn't very much offense to begin with in this game, but Johnson could kick a field goal from 50. I mean, he made a 45. So they just they just couldn't get anything going offensively to get even closer Johnson to kick one more or anything. So the conditions must have just been terrible for both teams.
Yeah, it was just an absolute downpour. At one point, Middleton just went to the wing tee just to try and do something on the ground, and they just, what a slop fest it was. And now we've got our second matchup, guys, where the teams have the same nickname. It's Vikings versus Vikings. Middleton at Coeur d'Alene this Friday night. Coeur d'Alene is a team that early on in the season, they beat Rigby. Then they kind of stubbed their toe in that weird Thursday night loss to Lewiston. And then I feel like everybody kind of forgot about Coeur d'Alene. Well, hey, spoiler alert, Coeur d'Alene's still really, really good. Only 2 losses all year. Outstanding defense. They're only allowing 14.3 points per game. Paul, what does Middleton have to do to go on the road and knock off a very talented Coeur d'Alene team? Well, I think Paul froze up again. Lucas, what does Middleton have to do to go to Coeur d'Alene and beat the Vikings?
Yeah, I'll pinch hit here again for him. Well, first, it's find some offense. This is a team that scored single digits last week. They got to get it going on the ground. That's Middleton football. That's where they run the football well. Get Drew Holman going. If he can get going, that opens everything up in the passing game as well. And Middleton, if they keep this thing close, I like their chances if they find themselves in a close game towards the end of the fourth quarter. This is a team that's played in close games pretty much all year. They just played one against Highland. They won a 3-point game against Mountain View earlier in the year. They had another close game against Capital. And then we all remember that game they won in the last play against Meridian in overtime too. So Middleton knows how to gut out these close wins. So if they can get the ground game going and get the defense going as well, like they did last week, they find themselves in a close game late in the fourth quarter. Who knows?
And for Coeur d'Alene, Caden Simmons started last year at quarterback as a sophomore. He's really matured and progressed in his junior season. He's a tough guy to bring down, and he does such a good job of keeping the play alive. And, of course, Kai Wheeler is number 1 target, also very talented in that pass game for the Vikings. And look at the coaching matchup here. Paul, are you with us? Look at the coaching matchup. Bill Brock in his 25th year at Middleton, Sean Amos in his 28th year at Coeur d'Alene. These are like 2 of the 5 longest tenured coaches in the whole state. They might be 1 and 2.
No, absolutely. And Brock was at Glenn's Ferry before that. I mean, he's been coaching a very long time. So is Sean Amos, and that's a coaching family. up there. So yeah, you get two coaches that have been there, close to 30 years. They've seen a thing or two. You're not going to surprise them with much, and you also have to expect some things come out of their back pocket that maybe some people haven't seen if they need to. So yeah, it's exciting. You don't see these tenured coaches like this anymore, just because coaches bounce around so much. And so I really like to see coaches who stay true to their school and stick around for a long time.
Yep. And Sean Amos coached at Kellogg, I believe, before Coeur d'Alene as well. So he's got a little bit of run up here as well. Okay, one more comment from that Rigby Post Falls matchup here. Chris Hunt wouldn't ever want to look past a program as good as Post Falls, but anyone saying they aren't circling that Rocky game is lying, Lucas.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of the whole point I was making is Rocky hasn't been tested the whole year. Rigby, if they play him, will test him. Rigby will punch Rocky in the mouth at some point in that game. And the question is, how will Rocky respond? But again, a topic for next week, potentially. Got to get
So are they looking past Eunice so much that maybe Eunice can surprise them, Lucas?
To me, that's a Jimmy's and Joe's thing. If they do start slow, there's just so much firepower for Rocky that even if they do have a slow start, I just think there's too much firepower there for Rocky. But it could be one of those things where CUNA comes out, maybe takes an early lead. But I think once the game settles in a little bit, I think Rocky will cruise. They've been doing it all year.
Very, very diplomatic answer. Well done.
Yeah, and it's political season, so we got elections tomorrow.
That's right. Well, I don't think you could find two opponents who despise each other more than Donald Trump and Kamala Harris than the Rigby Trojans and the Madison Bobcats. They're not that far from each other. Very fierce rivalry. Allison Sessions says, let's go Madison Bobcats. So let's check out. They had the final game in the opening round last week, guys. They got to host a Capital team that, finished 3-7. So really, but this game, guys, at halftime was only 14-7. I would love to know what kind of pep talk Coach Chandler Rhodes gave his Bobcats at halftime, because they come out in the second half, totally blow it open, 49-21 final. Cash Summers, 3 rushing touchdowns in the victory for Madison, 9-1. Their only loss is still to Rigby in a game that was fairly competitive, fairly back and forth. And now we get this huge matchup between Madison and Eagle. This is an Eagle team that lost to Rocky Mountain in the SIC championship game. Lucas, a team that I haven't gotten a good feel for Eagle this year. They've looked good at times, and then there's other times where like they struggled to put Meridian away, and Meridian didn't even make the playoff. What do you make of this matchup?
Yeah, I think Eagle is. Look, they still have one of the best running backs in the SIC in Noah Burnham. They still have an elite quarterback in Austin Ramsey. So it's an offense that can certainly move the ball. But I do see your point. They won a game back in early October against Owyhee, a game that was like 7-3 or 5. It was single digits. I don't remember the exact score, but they won a close single digit game like that. And then a team that puts up 52 on Mountain View. They score 68 against Centennial, lose 38-0 against Rocky. So definitely seeing some inconsistency this year a little bit with Eagle, but I do think it's a team that when push comes to shove, they can turn it on and play with some of the best teams in the state. They're going to have to do that this week against Madison. Madison is, I kind of feel like these are two teams that are kind of playing in the shadows of the elite team that's on their side of the state, right? Madison's kind of playing in the shadow of Rigby a little bit. Eagle kind of playing in the shadow of Rocky a little bit. So I do think these are two kind of underrated teams in terms of where they come from, and it's definitely the premier matchup of the week in 6A. I think it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, Chris Hunt says in the chat, Madison's size is no joke. Turnovers decide that game. Sean, I know you've been following Madison closely all season long. Madison is trying to get to the semis for the first time since 2015. That was almost 10 years ago, Sean. What do you think?
Hey, when I saw this bracket, I felt like Madison got the best bracket for the seed, for coming in second against Rigby. I felt almost like Madison had a better bracket kind of laid out in front of them. I feel like a game against Eagles, a winnable game for them. They only really allow 14 points a game. They put up 35, and they've only lost to Rigby, it was a very competitive game. Madison has scored, 23 rushing touchdowns. Summers, Beck, they've got a lot of guys on this team that can run the ball, and even their quarterback will also run the ball as well. And so if it comes down to defense and ball control, which we've all said 13,000 times, Madison's been able to do it all year. And I think they'll be able to continue to do it next week.
This is looking way down the road, but if Madison could get past Eagle, could get past Coeur d'Alene or Middleton, could we? Oh man, if Madison and Rigby met for the title, that might be the largest attendance in ICCU Dome history.
Those two. Oh yeah.
Without a doubt.
That'd be insane. Oh my gosh, that would be awesome. All right, guys.
Get a Jumbotron and project the game out of the practice field outside. That would be packed.
Yeah.
How about that gate in Pocatello if those two teams meet?
That's a lot of hot dogs.
The previous high I saw was when Rigby played Highland a couple of years ago in the state championship game. Ironically, that same night, the former Idaho State football coach, Rob Fennessy, was taking a big box of stuff out of his office because he had just been sacked. And so everyone's like, oh, this is awkward. This is like the most people in a single night at the ICCU Dome. And here's Rob Fennessy taking all this stuff out. So
I remember that night. Yep.
Yeah, good time for sure. All right, let's move on to our 5A preview, guys. Skyline, it almost went chalk across the board. The only quote unquote upset was Blackfoot over Preston. But if you looked at the max preps and overall records and stuff, I think you would have said Blackfoot would have been the favorite in that one. Sean, let's start with the team at the very top of the bracket, the Skyline Grizzlies. They took care of Nampa 42-14. This is a game that you were broadcasting for IdahoSports.com.
Yeah, Skyline, Skyline is good. We've seen them play. But if you would have told me Carmine Garcia is going to throw 3 interceptions and they're still going to win 42-14, you'd have been crazy. It'd been crazy talk. But once Skyline gets settled in and they start running their motion and fake handoffs to Zane Crockett or Trey Kirkham, they're pretty much almost unstoppable. They'll do a few plays and then it's a touchdown. Few plays and it's a touchdown. But I think the most underrated thing about the Skyline team is their defense. Their defense is lights out. They just don't miss. They tackle early. Kason Smith is a force to be reckoned with. He had 11 sacks on the year and then got one in this game, which was his 12th. And then the next play, he was about to sack the quarterback, jumped about 50 feet in the air, caught the ball, and returned it 70 yards for a touchdown. Skyline is who they are, who we thought they were.
Yep, pretty awesome. And I've always said Skyline, through this big run of success, it's really about the running game. Abron Silverio for so many years, now Zion Crockett kind of filling that role as the sweep back, as it were. They will be taking on Twin Falls, Lucas. The Bruins beat the Bengals 31-9. This is a game that you were on the call for IdahoSports.com. Ty Hess, pretty economical, 14 of 18, 196 yards, a touchdown through the air and on the ground.
Yeah, and he rushes. He's probably more of a threat with his legs than he is with his arm. But yeah, I mean, 14. I didn't realize he had that high of a completion percentage. That's pretty incredible. The story for Twin Falls the last 2 weeks, guys, is the defense. This is a Twin Falls team that's given up one defensive touchdown over the last 2 games. This one, and it was a garbage time touchdown. Lewiston scored that touchdown with 2 minutes left in the game. It was 31-3. And the game was over. And that was the only touchdown that Lewiston had scored. Now, granted, I will give this to Lewiston. They were without their top 2 running backs last week. So I do think that probably played a factor in this one, but did it play enough of a factor where it was 31-9? I don't know. I've been very impressed with Twin Falls' defense, forcing 5 fumbles. They only recovered 2 of them, but they turned both of those into touchdowns. Sam Martin's a guy that he can get it done through the air. They gave him a couple touches on the ground as well. So he's a nice complement piece that they have. And then Amos Kuhn as well is one of the better backs coming out of the Magic Valley, over 100 yards and a touchdown for him. But just such a Ben Coring game for this one. It really was. Twin Falls just outcoached Lewiston in this one. They had the better game plan. Defense was phenomenal. They controlled the line of scrimmage, forced turnovers, and then turn the turnovers into points. And that's exactly what Twin Falls, when they're playing their best football, that's what they do. So looking into how they match up against Skyline, Twins got to bring that elite defense to the Dome this weekend. They have to play elite defense and keep this game. They have to somehow tame Skyline, probably keep the game in the 20s, if not lower.
Yeah, here is the matchup, Twin Falls and Skyline. Scott, look at those two defenses. They're almost identical, 13.7 points per game for Twin Falls, 13.4 points per game for Skyline. Can the Bruins make it to the semifinals for the first time since 2009, Scott?
Whew. I tell you what, if there's any team that's hungry and tired of getting stopped in the same place, it's got to be Twin. They are kind of, Skyline's been their Achilles heel for 2 straight seasons, and it's about time, if you're Twin, to get over that. But it's about Twin peaking at the right time, kind of finding their identity and their stride at the right time. Because we've seen these teams in the regular season just kind of cruise, and then something happens late, and they never really get back on track again. Twin Falls right now is the exact opposite. And I think the biggest part of that is what Lucas alluded to, and it's their defense. I mean, you look at the last 3 weeks of the or last 3 games that they had. They held Burley to 7 points, Minico to 7 points, and that was a defensive touchdown. And then Lewiston, to 9 points. Their defense is finding their stride right now. And we talked about this in the 6A. You want to win a state title, you better be able to run the football and play defense and have a quarterback that does nothing but manage the game. And that is exactly what Twin Falls is. So, yes, they've got a chance to beat Skyline this coming weekend.
Here's Luis in the chat, guys. The Bruin defense is elite, especially that D line. Sean, I'll give you the last word on this from the Skyline point of view. I don't think you can get away with throwing 3 interceptions against no disrespect to Nampa, but Twin Falls is kind of, and that's how it should be in the playoffs. As you advance, the quality should go up a little bit. Skyline's got to start fast in this one.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've seen Twin Falls play. I called the game between Pocatello, and Pocatello beat Twin Falls 18-15, and it was a defensive laundry fest, maybe like 50 flags, and Twin Falls defense holding Pocatello to 18 points is speaks volumes to me, because they have Hunter May, who is dynamic. So Skyline's going to have to play well. They're not going to want to turn the ball over. That's what their coaches talked about before the game, is not turning the ball over. They have 3 turnovers against a Nampa team, which they could get away with, but you won't be able to get away with that with Twins. So Skyline is going to have to clean it up, but the easiest way you clean it up is to give the ball to Zion Crockett 30 times. I mean, when it works, it works. And they do so much misdirection in the backfield, it's really hard to key in it, because even if they don't give it to Crockett, Garcia can run. Liam Lynch, also a very strong junior running back. They've got so many weapons, and they have the elite defense. I think it's going to, it might be a closer on paper, but Skyline, I think right now is playing some of the best football they've played all year.
For sure. All right, Sean, I know you've got to run really quickly. I just want to get your quick thoughts on this game as we moved it further down the bracket now. Pocatello and Bishop Kelly. Bishop Kelly gets the 48-3 win. Pocatello wraps up their season. Hunter May, 176 passing yards. They got 1 field goal. That was it. Bishop Kelly just wins ugly, but they win. And this was the first time, Sean, they really have blown somebody out this year. This was, I thought, pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, it was, Bishop Kelly for me was kind of a head scratcher looking at some of the games they played, like the very close game against Bonneville, 20-28. You kind of just wondered, but Pocatello is a good team. They graduated 20 plus seniors that played large minutes. And I think that was a very apparent in this game, that Pocatello did not have the depth that they had last year and just couldn't stay with a team like Bishop Kelly, who's just kind of loaded, as you can see there on the graphic with players, and they're just able really to push them. But you can't, and you guys are going to talk about this even more. You can't give away 2 turnovers or 3 turnovers and expect to win a playoff game, unless you're Skyline, I guess. But it's very difficult to turn the ball over. That turnover margin of error is what every coach will talk to you about. And yeah, it was a good season for Pocatello, but just Bishop Kelly has a little too much.
Yep, for sure. All right, Sean, I know you've got to go. So thank you for your expertise and good luck this weekend as well, broadcasting for IdahoSports.com.
All right. Thanks, guys. Don't let Scott talk too much.
Okay. See you, Sean. Well, we're going to get to Scott here in just a second. But Paul, Chris asks in the chat, is BK the most underrated one-loss defending champ ever? They're 9-1. And yet I did this last year and I said I wasn't going to do it this year, but they just don't wow me. And they play with fire so often. Now, this was an impressive postseason opener for sure, but they had so many games in the regular season that were close and they didn't put it away until real late. And yet BK just keeps winning.
You're biased because you called that Rigby BK game. And so that's just stuck with you throughout the rest of the season. You know, they got absolutely hammered that game. And so I think a lot of people, whether they want to or not, even though it's Rigby, they still go, man, they got their butt kicked. They can't be that good. But it was Rigby. So yeah, I do. I think they are one of I wouldn't say they're probably but I'd say they're definitely one of the most underrated one-loss champs. Definitely this year, probably in recent years. For sure. I agree with that.
That's the one time I saw them with my own eyes was that Rigby game. But like Bonneville, they only won 28-20. Nampa, they only won 19-0. That was a tight game for most of it. Valley View, they won by a touchdown, 21-14. Ridgeview, 38-29. I mean, Ridgeview was playing with them into the third quarter, and Ridgeview won that one game this year. Like, I don't know. Lucas, you'll be the ultimate decider here.
I mean, here's the bottom line for me. They're winning all of those games. They're finding ways to win. And you go back to this coaching staff, as they've lost one time. They haven't lost to a 5A team yet since this new coaching staff taken over, and that's including a state championship game. This team just finds ways to win. And that's what it takes to get it done in the playoffs. They have a sound running game. Bishop Kelly is always well coached, regardless of whatever sport it is, not just football. It's across the board, across that entire athletic department. So you get into these games late, third, fourth quarter, games on the line. Bishop Kelly's been there. They've been doing it the whole year. So, I mean, yeah, it hasn't been impressive wins, but the bottom line for me is that they're winning.
Mm-hmm. It is. And, and Bishop Kelly's got that culture and that pedigree that they're supposed to win, so even when they find themselves in these situations to where they're playing at the level of their competition, they've got that second gear built into them because they know. And that's what winning does. And you take those kind of scenarios and you put it into a program that really doesn't know how to win. They don't have that second gear. Bishop Kelly can just turn it on whenever they want. And that is the kind of culture that they have that a lot of us wish we did have. And that's why we all want them gone to 6A. Right. Exactly. So I've taken my lumps coaching against BK over the past 30 years. And I've always celebrated the ones where we got the victories. But yeah, BK is kind of the pinnacle. And Lucas is right. They know how to win, and they're doing it.
Yeah. Here's another team that's done a lot of winning. Their quarterfinal opponent, Minico, they defeated Emmett last Friday 40-6. I mean, they were up 40-0 at one point. Scott, Preston, Sonner, Cranny, 5 rushing touchdowns. This just in, breaking news. Preston Sonner Cranny has scored another rushing touchdown. It just happened. I mean, he went through that Emmett defense like a hot knife through butter.
Mm-hmm. And who's this kid? I've never heard of him. So this Sonner Cranny kid, we talked about him last week. And again, you're going to hear this same song throughout all the brackets. Run the football, play defense, stop the run, the end. And we get too many programs that focus in on the frills and all this kind of stuff, and that doesn't get you anywhere. It's like the basketball team, and all they do is shoot threes. Yeah, you're going to win a lot of games, but you're not going to win the big ones when it counts, because that isn't always going to be there. Defense and running is. And Minico, defensively, this is where they were impressive. They absolutely shut down the run. 38 carries, 52 yards, 1.4 yards a carry for Emmett. They just couldn't get anything going offensively. Only 176 total yards. But, when you can do what Minico did, then, man, and get that monkey off your back, with Emmett, then that just kind of makes you have that sigh of relief. And now we can move forward.
After getting revenge after losing to Emmett in last year's opening round of the playoffs, I think they were motivated to get out and win. You know, we hear a lot, and we'll probably hear a lot tomorrow about certain people having an enemies list. I'd say Minico has an enemies list as well, and Bishop Kelly is definitely on it because Bishop Kelly beat Minico earlier this year 20-8. Scott, it was a very tight game, kind of like BK does, until in the fourth quarter, BK finally put it away, but it was a one-score game most of the night. What does Minico have to do to knock off Bishop Kelly in the rematch?
They've got to do what they've continued to do, and they've got to believe. You know, there's so much talk about BK, defending champs, so good, this, that, and we just did it. They've got to see past all that, and they've got to realize that Minico football can get the job done. And they're better than they were back then. Now, granted, BK probably is too, but it's not about BK. They can't put their focus there. It's about, we're a better football team. We can do this. We can do this. Stick to the game plan, stop the run, control the clock. Bishop Kelly's not going to score if they don't have the ball. So keep feeding Sonner Cranny and stop the run, and then see where it falls at the end.
Yeah. And Eddie Card in the chat reminding us all that Preston Sonner Cranny is a great wrestler as well. Yes, that's that Minico wrestling program is top notch for the 5A classification. That is for sure.
Yeah, football and wrestling hand in hand in toughness. Who knew? Right?
Yeah.
So other schools get that all figured out.
Yeah.
I mean, we're trying.
Well, let's move to the bottom half of the bracket then. Let's take a look at Hillcrest. They are the number 2 overall seed. They shut out Sandpoint 35-0 last Friday, guys. Tyson Sweetwood, 194 yards, 2 touchdowns passing. The defense, 4 sacks and a pick. I mean, Sandpoint did nothing. I mean, they 31 passing yards. The leading rusher had 33 yards on the ground. Just an absolute suffocation by the Hillcrest Knights, the number 2 overall seed. And Sandpoint just never had that mojo that they've had the past couple of years. Meanwhile, in the other opening round game of this particular semifinal or quarterfinal matchup, Blackfoot goes to Preston and wins 30-24. It was kind of a back and forth game, but Jace Cooper throws a couple of touchdowns, one to Jaden Rodriguez. Ballesteros, who's a soccer player that kicks for them, came in and hit a field goal. Jaden Rodriguez also scored on the ground. Good economical win for Blackfoot over Preston. Blackfoot's now 6-4. Preston, the District 5 champs, are out after getting the home playoff game. And now it sets up, Paul, this really interesting East Idaho All District 6 quarterfinal matchup here between Blackfoot and Hillcrest. Kind of like CUNA, Blackfoot's one of the very few teams that's still playing football that has a negative differential, only scoring 22 a night and allowing almost 30 a night. But first-year head coach Josh Stewart did this so many times at Declo over the years. When he gets to the playoffs, he just finds a way to maneuver his way through the bracket.
Yeah, and I think they mirror CUNA a lot in that regard. I think it's the coach that's got them this far by utilizing the talent he's got. And he's gotten them to a place where, you know, a lot of people didn't think they would get. Does the trail stop here for them like it probably will CUNA? Yeah, probably. But they had a great season, and it's a building season, and they have so much to look forward to. And so, you know, it's a testament to Josh Stewart, his coaching style, the buy-in that he got from the team, the players to get this far. So Hillcrest is just dang good. You know, they were talking about maybe BK being, you know, underrated, looked over. I think Hillcrest has been. I think Hillcrest is a darn good football team.
Hillcrest was a made field goal away from being the defending champs. I mean, they had a shot at the game-winning field goal against Bishop Kelly last year and couldn't convert. Hillcrest did beat Blackfoot in the regular season 33-13. They got out to a 20-6 halftime lead. So for Blackfoot, they've got to make sure they start quickly out of the gates to try and keep up with what is a high-octane Hillcrest offense, averaging 35 points per contest. And then the final quarterfinal matchup, guys, as we pull up the bracket again here at the very bottom, it's Valley View making the longest trip of anybody in this classification to Lakeland. The Hawks defend home field with a nice, that's backwards. 42-14. They beat Shelley. Don't look at that graphic, guys. Lake, that's fake news. So that's something else we'll hear a lot tomorrow night. Fake news. Lakeland beats Shelley 42-14. Lovey Weil, 119 yards on the ground. Another guy that just ran the ball extremely well, Scott. Hayden Benson, very economical, 8 of 12 for 66 yards and a touchdown. 2 short touchdown runs for the QB as well. For Shelley, they were missing their top 2 running backs, both with, I believe, ACL injuries, just ran out of steam at the end here. And so it was a very nice win for Lakeland, who very quietly is 8-2. And they will take on the Valley View Falcons, another team that's been exceptional this year. They're 7-2. They defeat Bonneville 28-6. Lucas, if fans statewide don't know the name Onyx Carson, they're going to get a very good introduction to him. He scored the game-winning touchdown against Emmett with like 20 seconds to go earlier this year. He ran for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. He is the focal point of this Valley View offensive attack.
Yeah, and like Scott said, we're going to hammer it this show. The running game and defense, it starts with Onyx Carson here for Valley View. 23 rushes, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns. Valley, that's half of Valley View's points right there. So begins and ends there with Carson, but the defense as well with 6 takeaways. There's the difference in that game right there, and it was only 28-6, a game that Valley View maybe could have added another touchdown or so towards the end of it. But when your defense is taking the ball away 6 times, you have a running back that's going over 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. Your team is going to have a chance every single night. And I know there's a lot of people up north that really like Lakeland. And we talked about Hillcrest being a sleeper in this bracket, talked about Bishop Kelly being a sleeper, Lakeland probably also a sleeper in this bracket, talking to some people up north. But I'm telling you, Valley View can win this game. And if Onyx Carson goes for 132 yards and the defense gets some takeaways, this is a really good Valley View team, a sneaky good team in the SIC all year. The only losses are to Bora, who made the 6A playoffs, and they lost by a touchdown to Bishop Kelly. That's it. So this is a really good Valley View team, and I'm a Treasure Valley guy, so I'll put Lakeland on upset alert.
There we go. Chris Hunt in the chat says, shout out to those Bonneville Bees. Fought hard the whole way. Yes, 3rd coach in 3 years at Bonneville, but Shane Stevenson, I think, is going to be a good foundational piece at the coaching spot. Played 2 different quarterbacks. They each threw 3 interceptions. That's just a tough way to try and win in the postseason. And then here is the matchup, guys. Valley View and Lakeland. Lakeland trying to get to the semis for the first time since 2007. Now, they've got Mike Schroeder in his 3rd year as the Lakeland coach, but prior to that, Paul, he was the head coach at Emmett, and he actually won a state championship with Emmett in 2015. So he knows a thing or two about coaching in the postseason. And meanwhile, for Shea McClellan, he's still a relatively newbie when it comes to coaching. He was the head coach at Marsing for a season. He was the offensive coordinator at Coal Valley Christian for a couple of years, and otherwise first year at Valley View as well. So the coaching matchup, I think, is going to be really fascinating in this battle.
But of course, Shay's been around a football field once or twice in his life. He knows football, but does high school football translate into the pro game? Probably not so much, but I think the mentality does. And so from that aspect, McClellan has kind of a leg up. But yeah, Mike, he's been around a long time. He's coached some really good teams, and Lakeland has the luxury of waiting for Valley View to come to them. And that home field advantage up north is something that just can't be understated, especially this time of year when it's cold. It's always damp, whether it's raining or snowing or not, it's damp. And so that just makes it extra cold, and these kids are used to it. The Valley View team, yeah, they're from down here in the banana belt here in southern Idaho. So whether people like to admit it or not, that definitely plays a factor up there with the South teams going north.
Yeah. And these are just about as even, Steven, as you can be when it comes to the averages in terms of what they score, what they allow. I will say with my own eyes, I think Lakeland has the best offensive and defensive lines that I personally have seen this year. So I'm very excited to see how Valley View counteracts those really good, tough linemen for Lakeland. They do play a lot of guys two ways. That's maybe one spot where Valley View could take advantage. Lakeland does play a lot of guys two ways, so they do tend to wear out a little bit as the game goes along. All right, guys, let's move to the 4A bracket. Quarterfinals are set. Sugar Salem, Homedale, Weiser, Kimberly all got first-round byes. They all will host quarterfinal matchups. It will be Snake River at Sugar Salem in an all-East Idaho battle. So let's start there first. Guys, I got to be honest. This is the game I have the least amount of information on. Snake River did defeat McCall Donnelly 17-15. Snake River was up 17-0. McCall Donnelly nearly came back. This was a Saturday afternoon game. Nobody really reported any stats. I tried to watch film. Wasn't really available. There was a couple of games I tried to go back and watch on the official video partner of these state playoffs. They weren't available. So I just am kind of guessing a little bit here, but Snake River, Johnny Walker scores a rushing touchdown. Rylan Ibarra is back at quarterback for the Panthers, which is good. He missed a little bit of time earlier this season, so he is back in action. But guys, Snake River now walks into the Lion's Den. Scott, I mean, when we talk about Sugar Salem, they are the preeminent force in 4A football.
Oh, absolutely. That is the one that everybody's got the target, on their back is Sugar. Where's Jeb when we need him, right? So, but yeah, I mean, you look at this, Sugar Salem team, they are so good. I mean, just by the numbers, I mean, they're almost doubling up the scoring average, allowing 11 points a game. But the thing about it is, they're not getting tested. And I think that was one of the things that maybe Lucas alluded to earlier was just the lack of close games, right? Sometimes when you are in that situation and you get tested in the playoffs, you don't really have anything to fall back on, right? If you've been cruising. Now, granted, Sugar has dropped a couple of games this year, Star Valley, Wyoming, and the one that we talked about that was Kimberly. But aside from that, they've got so many blowout wins. They are so talented and so good. And Snake River, man, they're going to have their hands full. That's for sure.
Yeah, this is and this game will be inside the ICCU Dome Friday night. It is the late game, 8:15 on IdahoSports.com. Both these coaches know how to win. Tyler Richens for Sugar Salem. Jeff Daly in his second stint at Snake River, he won a couple of titles, his first go around with the Panthers as well. Couple of comments here from Jeb. Scott, ask and you shall receive.
There we go.
Yes. Snake has been dealing with QB issues. Yes, they've had some significant QB injuries. Like I said, Rylan Ibarra was out for a little bit earlier this season. They had to go with Mortensen at QB. One game they even put, I think it was Johnny Walker at QB and just ran some Wildcat. In this game against McCall Donnelly, about 8 different ball carriers, just doing what they can. They'll put anyone in the backfield or at QB. Injuries have plagued Snake River. Not a good week to be beat up with injuries.
Yeah. I may have texted Jeb and told him to.
Oh, there you go. You told him to get on. Jeb said it. I said at the start of the year, if there is a year to beat Sugar, it's this year. Most years, that is not the case. Our colleague Lance Taylor, who's a broadcaster for IdahoSports.com, he lives in Sugar City. Yeah, he said that as well. We saw him at the Rocky Mountain Rumble way back in August, and he's like, guys, I'm telling you, Sugar is not as good as they've been this. And I'm just like, yeah, shut up, Lance. Okay, Sugar's only going to go 9-1 instead of 10-0. Oh, okay. He might be onto something there. I don't know. I'm just saying.
That was an interesting impersonation you just did too.
Hey.
Yeah, where is Lance? He could chime in with so much information about what they have for dinner and what their bedtime is, and
he knows everything.
It's amazing what that guy knows, and it's almost like, dude,
yeah,
there's got to be some lines that are crossed here because you don't know that much.
Jeb says Lance is a sandbagger. He was sandbagging on what Sugar. That's what I thought, Jeb. I thought he was just blowing smoke personally, but we will see.
I got to throw this out there because Paul knows what I'm talking about. That football game we did with Homedale and Sugar, the 3-man crew.
Yep.
And we had Clay from Homedale and we had Lance from Sugar, and I was running the show in the middle, just kind of running the three-man football crew. And these two were spitting out all of these personal facts about all of these kids and families, and it was an absolutely awesome broadcast. But I felt like I was family with a lot of these people now because of the information that they had. That was so bizarre.
And no notes too. It was
none. Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, he was over at my house the other day and we were having some spaghetti, not with the full meatballs. But
the other day he was over at my house back in 2004 and we were that's a Lance going right there.
Oh, it was so bizarre. So bizarre. It was the weirdest thing I've ever been part of, and I'm juggling this weird thing. And man,
it was beautiful.
That's where Lance needs to chime on here and just tell us what he knows.
Well, if you're hoping for that Homedale Sugar rematch or maybe a Weezer Sugar rematch, it would have to come in the championship because Kimberly and Fruitland are the teams that are on the same side of the bracket as Sugar. Fruitland last week, a 47-13 victory over Teton. So the Timberwolves, who were the state runner-up last year in this classification, just never could quite get it going. Too many injuries to overcome in this one. Lucas, this Titus Vidlak kid can really spin it. He's been the starting quarterback since day one of his freshman year. He's now a sophomore, 224 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air, 2 more on the ground. Fruitland very quietly 8-2.
Yeah, they are. Fruitland's a good team, especially when Vidlak plays like that. Did all that on only 10 completions too. So a lot of big plays is what that tells you. And then, like I said last week, they have this nice change of pace back in Austin Tesla-Vidic as well, who had 114 yards, a touchdown as well. Tracy is one of his favorite targets. So Tracy caught 5 of Vidlak's 10 passes in that one. When he spins the ball like that and Fruitland plays like they did in this playoff game, they're tough to beat. Fruitland is going to be right there at the end if their offense plays like that. They're just so hard to get off the field. An 8-win team, and then those 8 wins kind of speak for themselves. And those 2 wins are against Weezer and Homedale. And the way the bracket's set up, maybe they'll see one of them at the end here as we head into championships.
And yet, Scott, now we have a very interesting rematch here between Fruitland and Kimberly. These teams played all the way back in the season. The Grizzlies won it 32-28. Kimberly had the lead in the fourth quarter and gave it away. Fruitland had an incredible come from behind victory. It was our very first hidden gem or uncut gem of the week here on Gem State Game Day as well, where Fruitland had this incredible comeback. Titus Vidlak throws a touchdown to bring Fruitland to within 3, 28-25 with 7 minutes to go. Kimberly then basically has to punt the ball away, and Caden McKenzie, a 66-yard touchdown run with 4 minutes to go. Fruitland jumped in front. Kimberly then drove all the way down inside the 20-yard line, couldn't quite finish off the deal. And so you thought at the time, Fruitland's got the head-to-head over Kimberly. They may rematch in the playoffs, but it would have to be in Fruitland again. Well, in an ironic twist, no, even though Kimberly lost to Fruitland, Kimberly gets to host the Grizzlies here in the rematch. Does that matter much, or what do you?
You factor in everything you just said, and you don't think that there is stuff on the bulletin board in the locker room for Kimberly, you're crazy. They gave up 19 points in the fourth quarter in the opener, right? So they had a lead. And they let Caden McKenzie run wild on him. I think he had over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, and they gave up over 250 yards rushing. And they only managed about 140, 145 yards rushing on their own. So stat line, you're looking at it, and you can't give up that many yards on the ground, yet you can't blow a fourth quarter lead, yet you can't drive down the field in the final seconds and come up empty. And guess what? That was the start of what we were talking about as Kimberly being, man, they are the best 0-2 team that we have. And then you've got Fruitland and Homedale and Kimberly, everybody beating each other up, and Kimberly a little bit still stinging from that opening one they let get away that maybe had the hangover for week 2, and you never know how those things set a season. Well, funny how things circle back around. And now you get that on your home field in a game that you probably should have won. And now you get a chance to kind of redeem yourself in a way. It's funny how it all works out. But for Kimberly, this is the game I'd want to play.
Yep. Good chance at revenge. Battle of third-year coaches, Joe Dilly for Kimberly, Jordan Gross for Fruitland, former NFL offensive tackle with the Carolina Panthers, Jordan Gross. Okay, let's move to the bottom half of the bracket, guys. Scott, we'll keep it with you. Let's talk about the boys from Buhl. Ooh-wee, 38-15 win over Marsh Valley. And look at Gabe Finley, 16 carries, 221 yards, 2 touchdowns. Dallas Price chipped in 99 yards and a score. We beat this drum all broadcast long here. Run the ball, play strong defense. Buhl very quietly 7-2.
Well, Buhl is one of those teams that is just really physical, and they're going to beat you down. It's just a matter of how they're going to do it, and they are the epitome of everything that we just got done talking about, because the ability to run the football, the ability to be physical. And then you've got a quarterback in Zach Azevedo that just manages the game quietly, but his stat line is really good. That's efficiency. That is what you need out of your quarterback. You don't have to throw the ball 20 times a game. You just got to be efficient when you do. And that is what Buhl does. And then just when you think that, okay, all right, we got him, they just punch you in the mouth again. And they're so physical that it just takes time. And in this game against Marsh Valley, it took a little time because they didn't really have the best first half in the world. I mean, they outgained Marsh Valley 250 to about 112, but they were penalty stricken. They had a couple of turnovers. One was on downs. The other one was an interception in the end zone. And, according to their coaching staff, they lacked just a lot of discipline. And that could just be an opening round thing. But overall, when they kind of dialed it in after half, they got it together. They ended up putting up 421 yards of rushing. When you mentioned Finley, 218, 3 touchdowns, but they've also got 2 other guys that can chip in too. And we talked about this early on, the 2-headed monster, the 3-headed monster, Dallas Price and Pierce. I mean, these guys can really help out. And so I like where this Buhl team is right now.
Yeah, Azevedo is a junior quarterback. He started last year. There's a real chance he breaks Buhl's all-time, passing yardage record. So, I mean, and Buhl's not known as a big throwing school historically. So, but still, pretty remarkable for this kid, Zach Azevedo. Definitely a guy to keep an eye on. And now, Scott, we'll find out. Buhl is going to go to home. They went to Weiser and conquered the Wolverines earlier this year. Can they conquer the team that also fell to Weiser, Homedale? This is the big dog here. Matt Holtry in his 16th year on the Homedale sidelines. What does Buhl got to do to get a win?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, you know what? We talk about the 4A quite often, about, Homedale and Weiser and Kimberly and Fruitland. And, and every once in a while you get these other teams just to kind of sneak their way in there, because the conference, the Snake River Valley Conference is the toughest in 4A. And when you got all these teams beating each other up, you're going to get a team like Buhl that's going to kind of quietly sneak in there. And this is a Homedale team that I've seen play in person. And it's not like they have any like giant stars, but they are so disciplined and so efficient in what they do that you've got to disrupt things. Because they're such a rhythm-oriented team that they just go out, they execute, they go out, they execute, they do this, do that. And next thing you know, you're down 20-0. You're like, what just happened? Well, they just marched the ball right down the field. So I think Buhl's going to have to roll the dice. They're going to have to take some chances, and they're going to have to be physical, and they're going to have to set that tone early. And when you have a physical team, that's one thing that you can do. You can come out and you can make a couple of really hard hits on somebody and just send a message. And I'm not saying be dirty or anything like that, but you know what I'm saying? That's Buhl's strength. So I'm interested to see if their physicality can disrupt Homedale.
Meanwhile, it's a stingy Homedale defense, that's for sure. 11.8 points per game. And I mean, all they do is get to the semifinals. I mean, I can't even tell you how many years in a row they have been a Final Four team. It's going to be a fascinating matchup. All right, our final matchup on the bracket, guys. American Falls goes to Moscow and wins 24-16. The Beavers' first win in the playoffs, guys, since 1995. Way to go, American Falls. I was at this game, so I'll just talk about it very quickly. American Falls, Zach Grigg, 27 rushes, 133 yards, 2 touchdowns. He scored on a 58-yarder just before halftime and a 1-yarder on 4th and goal from the 1 with about 1:30 to go that put the game on ice. You can't score 2 totally different ways other than that. Austin Adair caught a big, long touchdown pass from about 45 yards out from Dax Brower. Another efficient guy, right? 7 of 9, 104 yards and a touchdown. Moscow was significantly banged up. They were missing 3 of their top 4 wide receivers, including Butch Kiblin, who's also their best cover corner and handles almost all of the special teams for Moscow. It was a great season for the Bears. They come up just a little bit short, and now American Falls is going to try and do it again. Go to Weiser and knock out the Wolverines. I mentioned American Falls, their first win in the playoffs since 1995. That was also their last trip to the semifinals. Can the Beavers keep it going? They are going to have to play really stingy defense and ball control offense. It worked on Friday night, but Weiser is a whole different animal than Moscow. Veteran coach Tom Harrison in his 7th year, Idaho's all-time winningest coach. Weiser has a really good offensive and defensive line. American Falls, I think, will have their work cut out for them. That's for sure. Jeb says American Falls' first playoff win in over 25 years. Their last playoff win, they had a player named Adam Boomer, legend at the University of Montana. Yes, as a Grizz fan, that warms my heart to hear that old name from the past. However, their playoff run ended 2-95 to Tom Harrison at Snake River. He's the guy coaching Weiser on Saturday. Great job, American Falls, but it's going to be really difficult to beat the old war horse, Weiser's first SRB district championship in 20 years.
That's cool. Lucas, were you born in 1995?
96. So no, I was not.
Wait a minute. You were born in 96?
I was born in 1996. Yep. Feel old?
Sonny.
Yep, that's pretty funny, guys. Okay, we will move on to the 2A bracket here. The 3A bracket. I don't want to skip out on the 3A. There was so much good stuff that happened at the 3A level. If we look at the bracket really quickly here, Declo, Aberdeen, Westside, Grangeville got the first round bye. Declo, Nampa Christian, Grangeville, and Firth got the first round byes. They were the 4 district champions, but because it all gets reseeded, all 4 district champions are all on the top half of the bracket, believe it or not. And it's all the quote unquote at-large teams that are on the bottom. So let's start with Aberdeen. They beat Priest River 42-12. Luke Shackelford was our IdahoSports.com player of the game, 111 yards rushing with 3 touchdowns. The Tigers are now 8-1 on the season. Congratulations to Priest River as well. Fantastic year. They finish at 6-3. And now if we look at the bracket, where do they get reseeded? They get reseeded to, here we go. I keep wanting to show Kendrick for some reason. They get reseeded to North Fremont. Now, the Huskies also won in their playoff opener, guys. They defeated West Jefferson 20-14. West Jefferson actually led 14-6 at halftime. North Fremont scores twice in the second half to pull off the win there. 3 rushing touchdowns from 3 different players. Freshman quarterback Ruger Lenz, Owen Reed, and Dodge Wynn also score rushing touchdowns for the Huskies there. So, Paul, you've got North Fremont, you've got Aberdeen. What do you make of this matchup?
I'm gonna go out on a very big limb and say Aberdeen is going to be in the championship. I think they're just that good of a team. I tend not to, if you looked at our pick 6 at all this year, that I tend not to see things coming, especially when it comes to women, but I'd rather be holding Aberdeen's cards than anybody else really especially on the lower half of the bracket, but anywhere else. They're a good team. They're an overlooked team, I think. And that can make them a dangerous team from this point on. Once you hit the quarterfinals, things get real. And I think North Fremont's going to be a good test for them. But waiting for them in the next round is probably going to be Westside, who, Westside has always been the team to beat. But I like Aberdeen. I like Aberdeen a lot.
And Westside's the only team to beat Aberdeen.
Aberdeen did. Yes, That is correct, Scott. And Aberdeen did beat North Fremont on IdahoSports.com just a couple of weeks ago, 29-0. They shut them out. And you could see that stingy defense only allowing 7.3 points per game for Aberdeen. Battle of first-year head coaches here, guys. Keith Director for North Fremont, Derek Jolly from Aberdeen. No matter what, a first-year coach is getting to the semifinals in his first year. That's awesome. Love to see that. Okay, well, let's just stay with the bottom half of that bracket then, guys. Paul, you kind of alluded to it. You've got Westside and Rivalry. Do not discount the run-in Rivalry Bulldogs, all right? They are a fantastic team. And I mean, both teams love to run the ball. Westside and Rivalry both love to pound the rock. Rivalry had a nice first-round win over Marcin, wherever that went. Here we go, 28-15. Look at this, Scott. Rafe Newton, 129 yards and a touchdown. Coulter Lewis, 88 yards and 3 touchdowns. Both of those guys rushed for over 1,000 yards in the regular season. Ryrie lines up and runs that wing tee, and they make no bones about it. Look at Braylon Moon. He only threw 3 passes last Friday.
Mm-hmm. That's it. You get some of these teams that they've got 4 plays, but they run them so well. And it's like, you know what? We have 4 plays, and I'll tell you what, here's our playbook. Stop us.
Yeah, stop us. Right.
And that's the thing. And they subscribe to the KISS theory. Keep it simple, stupid. And so they have things can get so complicated for kids, but if you dial it down, you keep it simple, which is exactly what Ryrie's doing, then things are executed a lot more efficiently, as evidenced by, 44 rushes between Rafe and Coulter.
Yeah. Marcin finishes the year 6-3. Literally the only team I got nothing on, guys. No stats, no film. This was another game I tried to go back and watch a replay of on the official video partner of the state playoffs. Couldn't find it. So not sure, but Marcin, great season. Definitely. And then West Side, guys, they shut out Malad 43-0. Considering they only won 29-22 in the regular season finale over Malad, this was a much improved 43-0. The Sage brothers doing the heavy lifting. Crew Sage, 105 yards and a touchdown on the ground. His younger brother, Drake Sage, 52 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing, also had a receiving touchdown from Jaden Fuller. They held Malad to 47 rushing yards, 63 passing yards. And now you've got this West Side Rivalry quarterfinal battle that both teams love to run the ball. Both teams pretty much run the wing tee. Rivalry is more of a traditional wing tee. West Side is more of a kind of a modern wing tee, as it were. This game could be over. It's going to kick off at 6:00 Friday night. It could be over by 7:15.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's see.
Especially if West Side's completing 5 of 8 throws too. 3 incompletions. So the clock stops maybe 10 times.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So Rivalry was 1 of 3 passing. West Side was 5 of 8. So they combined for 11 pass attempts between the two teams last week. And Rivalry actually scores more per game. They allow a little bit more per game as well. This is new territory for Rivalry, Paul. This was, I believe, their first playoff win in school history. Paul's frozen up, so I'll just talk it through. I believe this was Rivalry's first playoff win in school history. They are now looking for their first trip. They're looking to keep it rolling. First trip to the semifinals, obviously, in school history on the line. West Side, all they do is win. Tyson Moser in his 16th year, well-oiled machine for the Pirates. Here is Angel Cerna. Derek Jolly has been the coach for Aberdeen for 16 years. I think this is his first year as the head coach, though. Braden Driscoll was the head coach last year, but maybe it's his second stint. Let me know in the chat, and I'll correct that. But certainly that bottom half of the bracket, West Side, Rivalry, Aberdeen, North Fremont, all teams that love to just run the football. And then the top half of the bracket is going to be all teams that got first round buys in kind of a weird twist, as it were. So, I mean, let's just look at the tail of the tape and break it down. You've got Nampa Christian taking on Declo here. Scott, this is a Declo team. You and I have both been very high on this year. Their only loss of the season came to Aberdeen, 8-0. Look at that. They're only allowing 5.4 points per game. That is the lowest total of anybody that's left playing football in Idaho.
Well, you talk about a really physical, stingy defense. This is it. And you can't say enough about this conference. The addition of Declo to join this year with Aberdeen and Westside, I tell you what, that is one heck of a good conference, because all they did was just beat each other. And I mean, it's such a tough, physical style of game for all of these guys. And, Declo, I mean, let's be honest, they're not going to have, I don't think they're going to have any problem with Nampa Christian. But congratulations to them for getting here. They were, I mean, they just got a tough draw. Let's be honest. Declo has got the best path to the championship of anybody. Not taking anything away from Grangeville or Firth, but you don't have to deal with Aberdeen and Westside because they're on the bottom half of that bracket.
That was huge. That was huge for Declo to win the conference title. They all tied. They all tied at 4-1 in league play this year. The tiebreaker was who had the higher max preps ranking. That was Declo. So Declo avoids that hot mess at the bottom of the bracket. Mm-hmm. And they do get a Nampa Christian team that won their district this year. It was a significantly weaker district than we've seen in years past. So we'll see what Coach Daniel Jenkins and the Trojans can do. They like to run the football as well. And then finally, guys, we've got Firth at Grangeville. Now, Grangeville, according to Max Prep's rankings, should be going on the road somewhere, but because Grangeville, the last 4 years, guys, I'm not even joking, the last 4 years for the quarterfinals, they have had to go to Westside 3 times and Bear Lake once. Like, you can't get any further southeast in Idaho than Westside and Bear Lake. So the coaches were like, oh my gosh, whoever comes out of the north, let's give them a break and let them host a quarterfinal game if they get there. And so I know a lot of people, including Paul, were up in arms over this, that Grangeville gets to host a game, but I thought it made sense personally. After the North champ, it was Grangeville 3 times and then Kellogg once. Had to travel to Southeast Idaho 4 years in a row. That'll absolutely bankrupt the school's funds to make a long trip like that. I do think Firth is the favorite in this game. West Jefferson, who just lost last week in the opening round of the playoffs, beat Grangeville in a neutral site game earlier this year. You've got the grizzled veteran Jeff Adams, 15th year as the head coach for Grangeville, runs a logging company during the days, guys, and then he coaches at night. And then you've got one of the best defensive tacticians there is in the sport, Rigo Vasquez, third-year head coach for Firth. But I like the Cougars. I mean, 11.9 points per game allowed to go on the road and get the win over Grangeville there. In the chat, Eddie says it's going to be a long drive up north. Yes, it is. But if Firth wins that, guess what? It'll pretty much be all East Idaho teams. All right, guys, let's wrap up with the 1A and 2A, the 8-man brackets. We'll go through these quickly because I can see already we've gone too long, and we can dive more in depth on our Idaho 8-man prepcast. But let's talk about what happened in the opening round last week, and let's start with Kendrick. They shut out Potlatch 54-0. They are very banged up still. They're missing Sawyer Hewitt, their starting running back. They're missing Carson Hogan up front. They're one of their best offensive linemen. They're missing their best receiver, Nathan Twite. It just doesn't seem to matter, Scott. They still went 54-0. Raleigh Rotsesender had a receiving touchdown and a punt return touchdown, all in the first quarter of play.
Kendrick's a machine, and they're going to roll. And even though they're up now, it's the same old story. But hopefully for Kendrick, they can get healthy. They're going to have Cami, which I don't think they're going to have too big of an issue with. But in that next round, you got Logos waiting for you, and that's a team that can get Kendrick and has. So it's not going to get easier for them after this, but they've got to take some time and get those guys healthy, because that's going to make a huge difference going down the stretch. Because, like I said, Logos waiting for them, and then on the top of the bracket, my goodness, what a mess that is.
Yeah. So you mentioned it. So the 4 district champs get the buys here: Butte County, Rimrock, Valley, and Logos. But you'll see there, Rimrock and Valley are actually road teams. Actually, Valley should be hosting. They're the number 4 seed. They'll host Hagerman, despite being lower than them in the max preps. But long story short, you're right. Kendrick gets the home game, even though they had a first round game. And it could be all North Idaho until the championship, potentially, if you're talking about Cami this week, Logos potentially next week. And these are things we've already seen. I was also to ask Paul about that Cami game because he was broadcasting this game for us on Saturday at IdahoSports.com, but I think he just rage quit. So he's out.
Off the whole time.
Yes. So let's break it down. They beat Glens Ferry 56-34. Paul, you were at this game. Can you give us a succinct analysis?
Wow. I came back after being gone for about a minute, just in time. That was it was a lot of David Clute. It was a lot of Everett Oatman. And you see there Damian Ochoa. He's the nose guard, by the way. And he was our player of the game with 2 interceptions. And they were kind of both right place, right time. There it is. But on the other side, Sterling, he had 3 touchdowns in the early on, 85-yard kickoff return he had. There's a lot of big players on both sides. It was a fun game to watch. And it was back and forth for a long time. Cami was up 22-12 in the first half. And then Cami just ran off yards and ran off points. And they're a big, strong, tough team. Clute, he's a big dude. He's kind of a Roethlisberger type quarterback, and big, strong. So if you need a few yards, it was funny. They did a couple of tush push plays with Clute, and the guys pushing the tush were 5'8", 135 pounds, pushing 6'3", 220 Clute or close to that, and but they got the yards. And Cami is a good team. I honestly wouldn't discount them as much as people might. I think they're going to have a good showing against Kendrick. It'd be an upset, obviously, if they won. But I still think they're going to have a very good showing up against Kendrick. They run the type of offense that inside the dome is going to favor them more than on that slushy, muddy, marshy field that they had on Saturday. So it's a game I'm interested in seeing just because I've seen both teams this year. And recently, of course, Cami and seeing those guys play hard. So yeah, it's going to be it was a good game. It was wet, it was cold, but it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, really looking forward to this rematch between Cami and Kendrick. Quick note from Alfred Marshall, our resident Potlatch fan. Potlatch was down a lot of injuries in that battle with Kendrick and just ran out of, impact players. And that's what you really need if you're going to take down the 800-pound gorilla that is Kendrick. I mean, averaging 57 points per game, allowing 10 points per game. In the regular season, Kendrick did defeat Cami 56-12. Now, Dave Clute had a nice game, 24 of 34, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, but they did not run the ball at all. 17 carries for -4 yards in that loss to Kendrick. So Cami's got to run the ball better and control the clock if they want to have a shot at knocking off Kendrick in the Kibbe Dome Friday night in Moscow. Also at the bottom of the bracket, we will have Grace and Logos. So let's talk about the Grace Grizzlies, Paul. This was another game you were at Friday night. They went to Cottonwood and beat the Prairie Pirates 48-38. Gavin Draper, 3 passing touchdowns. Carson Welch took a kickback, 70 yards for a score. Braden Kimball, look at that. A rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, a pick 6. And yet Prairie hung tough with them. What did you see from this game?
It was turnovers. Prairie had way too many turnovers. And well, you can see that. And they gave the game away with turnovers, or I guess I should say Grace took the game away with turnovers. And interesting about Briggs Rambo, big guy, hard to lose, but they ran plays for him where he would be wide open in the end zone, 10 yards out anywhere. And he was sneaky. He was just deceptively sneaky and open at times. So, Prairie is a fun team to watch. Of course, Ryan Hasselstrom, good guy, friend of the program. But Grace was just too much. And when I say a lot of turnovers, it wasn't they were, just throwing the ball up in the air. Grace is very, very tough defensively, causing turnovers. A very physical team on every play. They're very, very physical. So Grace moving forward against Logos is going to be a physical game. From what I've heard, Logos is also a physical team. So, those official, and they had a lot of, at the Cami game, they had 6 officials, which was a lot. But there in the Kibbe Dome, those officials had better warm up their shoulders because there's going to be a lot of laundry thrown, I'm guessing, during that game.
Well, speaking of laundry thrown, we can talk about this because, I mean, it happened and it's on tape. Grace's coach, James Newby, was ejected from that game Friday night, right? Against Prairie?
He was. And it's one of those, it was half his fault, I guess. At the end of halftime, pretty much everybody off the field in the end zone, he wanted to discuss a couple of things with the officials that he saw that he might have disagreed with, and the officials gave him an unsportsmanlike, and they assessed it on the next kickoff. Well, then I can't remember who was in the end of the third, start of the fourth. A Grace assistant coach got an unsportsmanlike, and so tossed. And so you get tossed. You don't coach the next. So
they weren't showing very much grace, were they?
The officials definitely did not show a lot of grace.
Right.
So as far as I know, that's the case. If it changed and someone else out there knows something different, that's the story I got from what I saw, and then talking to people after the fact, that's what happened.
And that could impact Grace now as they try to take down a Logos team that by the way, beat Kendrick, has beaten everybody except Butte County. They're at the top of the bracket against Rimrock. This is a weird where both teams were conference champions and they knew coming in Butte County was going to be the 1. Rimrock was going to be the 8, no matter what happened in the opening round of the playoffs, Lucas. So Butte County has had 2 weeks now to prepare for this opponent. Let's give a shout out to Rimrock, huh? How often do we get to talk about Rimrock football being a big player at the state level? Here they are in the quarterfinals, looking for their first trip to the semis since 2001, Lucas.
Yeah, been a minute for Rimrock. So obviously a big year for them for getting 1 win away from a spot that they haven't been. I was alive in 2001. Many of these kids, maybe not. So
I think I was collecting Social Security in 2001.
Yeah, exactly. No, but Rimrock's having a great year. You know, they're putting up 38 a game, giving up 20 a game, and they actually match up on paper pretty well with Butte County here. Butte County, this is one of the best offenses in the state, averaging just shy of 50 points a game, and a team that, unlike Rimrock, has made these deep playoff runs the last several years. You see it there, their last trip to the semis last year, right? So this is a long-term head coach in Sam Thorngren, who's now in his 18th year in an offense that can light up the scoreboard, a defense, 20 points a game in 8-man's pretty good. And both these teams are averaging and giving up about 20 points a game and scoring with the best of them in the state. So looking on paper, this should be a great game. Can't wait for them.
Not so much their offense. Yes, they have a great offense. It's their defense. I mean, they have got their quarterback, Keaton Archibald, a great defender. Razor Duke, great defender. Hendricks. I mean, they've got great offensive weapons. Well, those weapons are also great on defense and maybe better in some aspects. So they're definitely a two-headed monster there in Arco for sure.
Joel Richardson predicts Butte County by 3 scores. We'll see.
Why are you on that, Joel?
You know what? And I can see that there's something different about Butte County. It's just a different place. There's a quiver in the river up there. It is just a different place. And they are just so tough and so physical and so just, they're not afraid to come at you. But this is year after year after year. And I just watched their volleyball team with a bunch of sophomores and juniors absolutely destroy everybody at the 2A state tournament. And this was the perfect snapshot microcosm of what Butte County is. They just got big kids that are tough and they're going to beat you up. And this is year after year with Butte County. But the thing is with Butte County, they've got 1 loss on the year, right? Well, that was to Hagerman. Hagerman potentially could be their second round opponent, but Hagerman's got a loss, and that's the Valley. That's their first round. See, that's why I love this 2A bracket, and this top is a mess.
Yeah, I mentioned the circle of everyone beating everyone last week, but Valley beat Hagerman. Hagerman beat Butte County. Butte County beat Logos. Logos beat Kendrick. That's the circle of life there. Paul, Butte County is the defending state champs. They have that swagger. and they really hadn't been they got tested in the season opener with Logos, and then they went a long stretch where they never really were pushed. And I think Butte County would tell you that losing to Hagerman was the best thing that could have happened to them, because it forced them to readjust and go, hey, we can't just show up and win. We have to still work for it. We have to earn it. And Paul, I know, would agree with me if his signal wasn't frozen. So we will move on. Scott, let's talk about yeah. Oh, let's just get that off the screen. That sad sack. All right. Hagerman beats Raft River last week, Scott, 50-26. I mean, geez Louise. Wyatt Mavenkamp, 282 yards, 5 touchdowns passing. We're not used to seeing that in 8-man football. Kai Kendall, the best wide receiver in 8-man football, and I would say top 5 in the state, regardless. 6 catches, 136 yards, 3 touchdowns. Hagerman rolls. Raft River just didn't have enough. Shout out to Kai Ward, though, 207 yards rushing. That's a man's game, no doubt about it. But now it sets up Hagerman and Valley, the rematch. Valley was the only team that beat Hagerman this season, and it was kind of earlier on in the season, too. What do you make of this rematch, Scott?
Well, and I think that's the key. It was early on. It was back in September 13th, I believe. Valley beat them 56-40. The result here with Raft River, this is the second week in a row that Hagerman has played with Raft River. They beat them handily the week before, 42-6. You couldn't think that this one was going to be any different, regardless. And I don't care who you are. Your coach, you're going to say, hey, one game at a time. I get it. Yes, do that. But your dudes are better than their dudes, and it doesn't matter. You're going to win. Now you've got the rematch, because this is what all the eyes were on is, do we going to get a shot at Valley? And Valley is really, really good. This is a team that has been, let me bring this up here really quick. They have they have rattled off, 6 straight wins after losing their opener to Butte County. After that, they have just been unstoppable. And the point production from this Valley team has been incredible. Well, look at Hagerman. Look at their point production and what they can put on the board. This is a team that's throwing 70s and 60s and 50s. I tell you what, this scoreboard operator better be on high alert when this happens, because these are 2 very high scoring offenses, as you can see by the stat line. But the only thing is, who's going to have that chip on their shoulder? Is it going to be Hagerman because they already lost to Valley? Or is it going to be Valley and saying, you know what, we're confident enough we can beat them again? And this one's going to be at Valley. Hagerman's got their hands full, but they still have that awesome quarterback in Mavenkamp. They've got Kendall, who's one of the best in the state. And I want to give a shout out really quickly to Pierce on defense, who racked up, I think it was like 19 tackles last week. These are 2 really good teams, and this would be the game to be at, I think.
I think this is the game of the week statewide. This is the one. Hagerman Valley, absolutely going to be a head knocker for sure. All right, guys, let's wrap up with the 1A bracket. This is kind of a similar thing where the conference champs had buys. So it's Cary and Wallace and Council and Rockland. They all had first round buys, and now they all kind of get reseeded here, where you've got 2 conference champions now having to play, Wallace at Cary. So let's just start with the very first game of the 1A playoffs at the top there. Cascade, the last team to get in, had to go to Deary, the District 2 champion, and they win a very tight battle, 28-22. Stuart Derrick, 5 of 7, 105 yards passing, 138 rushing yards, and 3 touchdowns as well, Lucas. For Deary, a good effort. They came up just a little bit short, and now Cascade continues their season, kind of like a Rimrock. It's been a while since we've been able to go, Cascade football doing good things.
Yeah, both teams having well, on one hand for Cascade, their season continues obviously, and Deary, a team that was able to get into the state playoffs, have a playoff game. So, both pretty good seasons for both teams here, but for Cascade, from where they were just a few months ago to even make the state playoffs and then to win a state playoff game as well. That's hats off to them. They have a receiver here in Cole Olson who had 87 yards and a touchdown, 8 tackles and 2 picks from Owen Howlett down there as well. So then you have an efficient quarterback, 5 of 7 for 105 yards and a touchdown. Most of his work obviously done on the ground, but especially down in these lower classifications, there's just so much running, but sometimes the difference is how efficient are you through the air? Yeah, you're going to throw it less than 10 times, but if you complete 5 of 7 throws and you complete the throws when it matters, that really makes a difference, especially with these run heavy teams.
Yep. A couple of residual 2A comments here, guys. Alfred Marshall says Valley is the deal, and Katie says go Hagerman. So again, that's going to be our game of the week, I think. Valley Hagerman. That's going to be a fantastic battle. Okay, so who does Cascade get the pleasure of playing now? Dietrich. Oh boy, Scotty. Dietrich looks locked in. They defeat Chalice last week, 54-6. Look at Connor Perkins. Now 5 of 11 passing, 59 yards and a touchdown. Dietrich is trying to get Connor Perkins to be more comfortable as a passer because he's really been a wide receiver up until this year when he's been the quarterback. He's an athlete. You can tell by his 253 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. That's his first instinct. Ball snapped, I'm running. They're trying to make him more of a dual threat because Dietrich's going to need to have that balance as the playoffs go along. But a nice win over Chalice, 54-6. Congratulations to Chalice on a nice season, making the playoffs. But now they get Cascade. And this is a game, again, that looks like, okay, Dietrich probably the heavy favorite in this one.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to think that Dietrich is the heavy favorite, coming in. If you put any stock into the seeds, number 2, Cascade, number 7, Travel, if you want to call it that. But really, when you just boil it down to dudes playing dudes, Dietrich's got them. They are solid with all the guys that you just mentioned, but they're a run heavy team, obviously. But they can do it from a lot of different positions too, because if you've got a quarterback that can run, and you can hand it off to 2 other guys that can run, that gives you 3 dudes to think about as a defense. And running teams, they advance in the playoffs. Dietrich is that running team, that not only scoring almost 50 a game, but I mean, you look at what they're giving up too. That's toughness right there. And Dietrich has that. And so I fully see Dietrich being a tough match for Cascade.
Yep, and that's the bottom of the bracket. It's Dietrich and Cascade, and then also at the bottom half of the bracket, guys, as we pull it up here, you see it's going to be Tri-Valley and Rockland. Now, Scott, you mentioned Coleman Pierce in his 19 tackles for Hagerman. I'll do you one better. Look at Elias DeVries for Tri-Valley. Nice. 25 tackles last week, Lucas.
Nice.
This is a guy who averages about 2 sacks per game as well for Tri-Valley.
Yeah, 25 tackles is incredible. I've never seen that many tackles from a guy in a game at any level. That's unheard of. So
that's a dude that's flying around.
Yeah, no kidding. Especially when on the wider fields. Remember, just 8-man football, right? So he is all over the place, sideline to sideline. Wow, that's incredible, and a nice win for Tri-Valley as well. Tri-Valley's won 9 games, guys. This is a team that we talk about Dietrich, we talk about Carey in this classification all the time, but here's Tri-Valley sitting at the bottom of this bracket with 9 wins. Obviously, a defender there that flies around the field, and we just talked about how important efficient quarterback play is. When you get to this point in the 1A bracket, pretty much every quarterback is going to be able to run. But it's the quarterbacks that are able to complete, like I said, the 4 of 8s, the 5 of 7s, right? And here you have another quarterback with a 50% completion percentage. Again, not a super high completion percentage, but efficient 4 of 8. You complete the 3rd and 3 play action play you run late in the second half, right? I mean, those are the plays that matter. And so when you have the ability to run and you have a quarterback that runs for 3 touchdowns and then throws for 2 in the air, half his throws for touchdowns. I mean, that's efficiency there.
Yeah.
And I suck at math, Scott, but even I can do this math. 100 divided by 4, he's averaging 25 yards per completion.
Yeah. So these 35 yards that he's averaging per completion, or no, 25. Sorry,
25.
No, I'm kidding. It's 8-man. They don't have that second level, right? So if you run between the tackles, suck everybody in, boom, hit something short, hit something quick. These passes, most of the time, are not going 30 yards down the field. They're just something to suck everybody into the box, and then you bust it out with like a little swing, a little slant, a little something. But that's where the efficiency comes from. But it does still take a quarterback that has a little bit of accuracy, a little bit of timing to get it done. And those are the plays that really turn games. You look at that stat line, 4 of 8. Well, 4 of those plays went for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. That says something.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. They beat North Gem 42-20. Congrats to the Cowboys, 4-6 record this year. And now they get Rockland, a team that I think this is a trap game. Rockland was a district champion, but look at the averages, guys. They're scoring 38, but they're allowing 35 per game. They have had significant injuries this year. They had a game earlier this year where they played Cary, and they had 9 guys. They had 9 guys available for that game, and obviously it went about as well as it does against Cary. But Rockland is also incredibly down to its third-string quarterback. Xavier Parrish starts the season. He gets hurt in the first game. Isaac Held takes over, leads him to a win. Week 2, he gets injured. They go to the third-string quarterback, Zach Perman, a sophomore athlete, and despite having their third-string quarterback all season long, basically, Rockland still won their conference. The thing with Rockland is they have to win by winning shootouts. And as you get deeper and deeper into the playoffs, that becomes a tougher and tougher proposition. And so for Tri-Valley, haven't been in the semi since 2017. This, I think, is a good opportunity for the Titans to get through and advance. Paul, let's talk about the top half of the bracket. This is a game that you're going to be at Friday. Wallace and Cary, a couple of district champions here. Now, you look at the scoring. Wallace averaging 54 per game, Cary 52. Okay, so far so good. The defense, Cary allowing less than 12 points per game, Wallace allowing 30 points per game. That's not going to cut it against the Panthers.
Oh, it's not. It's not going to cut it against Preston Wood. I mean, just say the name and there it is. But on the other side, Cooper Miller, say that name. That kid's a stud, and he's how old? Freshman. Yeah, I mean, that's ridiculous. And Cooper Miller, along with Reese on the other side, Williams with the tackles. But Cary, they're just the full package deal. I mean, they are everything. And so having a Cary Wallace, I don't think it's a true 1-8 myself. I don't think Wallace is an 8. I think that as far as athletic ability, we've talked about Wallace on the 8-man prepcast a million times this year about how great they are. Great players. And so I think it's going to be a great learning year for those young players. And there's a lot of young players on Wallace's team. The minors are very young. And so in Cary, they got some experience behind them. So I don't see Cary really facing a huge challenge the next 3 weeks.
Yep.
Here's the story for Cary. They beat the number 2 team in this bracket, Dietrich, 54-6. Running clock early in the second half. I was at that game. We did that game, Gem State game of the week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just waxed them at Dietrich. Yep. Cary is legit.
And it's Preston Wood, AJ Black, Matthew Young, Stockton Sears. I mean, just athlete after athlete after athlete. And Black defensively is a problem too. AJ Black at the end, certainly. Yeah. Paul, you're going to be at Cary broadcasting. We always have to remind everybody that the last time you were at Cary, or the last time I heard you at Cary during the broadcast, you were just, all right, 3rd and 10 for the Panthers. Why, yes, I will take another Mountain Dew. Thank you.
I want to say one more thing about Cary really quick before we move on to Mountain Dew. Cary hasn't played a game since October 18th. So because they had the forfeit, right, with Camus.
Yeah.
Then a first round bye. And so it's been a minute since they played. So I wouldn't, I'm not saying that they're going to lose this game, but I wouldn't be surprised if come out with a little bit of rust to knock off. Just because
I see it as, do you know how healthy they are right now? I mean, anybody that had a tweaked ankle, they're fine. Anybody that had anything wrong, fine. We know they haven't been lifting weights, right? Because Kerry doesn't believe in lifting weights as a program. Coach Kirkland made that very well aware during his speech on weightlifting a few weeks ago on the 8-man prepcast. But they're healthy. That's all I can say is at this point, they're healthy. Sure. I don't know. I guess I just don't believe in Kerry rust.
I probably not. But if there's anything, I just wanted to throw that out there. It's been a minute since they played.
Yeah, but instinct. Yeah.
October 18th. But it's still Kerry. They're still a juggernaut, and they're still going to roll. But I'm going to throw it out.
That's one of those trumped up fake narratives from the mainstream media, Scott.
I know.
That's another phrase we'll be hearing a lot tomorrow night.
I am not that. I am the exact opposite.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Last but not least, guys, Garden Valley. They defeat Shoshone last week, 32-8. What an incredible ride it was for Shoshone. First time getting to the playoffs since 2000. Hung tough for a half, then kind of ran out of steam. But this is a building block to be sure. Garden Valley has kind of settled in on one QB. Now, Maddox Miller, less than 50% completions, but when you really need to, you give it to Trevor Korn. He had a rushing touchdown, a passing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, a very workmanlike win for Garden Valley. And now the level gets kicked up a notch here. A conference rematch with Council. These teams played in the regular season. Council, of course, won the matchup because they went undefeated in conference play. So this is going to be an interesting rematch here, Paul. The first time these teams played, it was back on October 11th, and it was a 42-24 final where Council pulled away, especially in the second half.
Yeah, and they match up really well. I'm here.
There was just a long pause there, so I wasn't sure if you heard me setting you up or not.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe you should. I don't know what's in your cup, Brandon, but I'm not going to say it's, Kool-Aid or not. But, Garden Valley Council, they see each other a lot. I mean, they're across a mountain from each other, but they still see each other a lot. A lot of history between these two. And, Yearsley, dude's been around. Tucker, I think he played at Garden Valley at one point when he was in his young life. That or his older brother. So, yeah, I mean, these two, the allowing are close. The scoring's close. But it's, Council's tough. Council's always big. Council's always tough. And yeah, settling down on one quarterback is good. And they have a lot of talent. In fact, one of the quarterbacks that they were going for, Tyler Rowland, reached out. He wants to be a broadcaster, and he's like, hey, I'd like to, shadow and check things out. So, if Garden Valley gets bumped out, maybe we'll get Tyler onto a broadcast in the semis.
Okay, that sounds great. We got a nice young pipeline. Former Kendrick quarterback Ty Kep made his broadcasting debut for us last week. He's going to be back at it this week as well, so I love it. In the chat, Tivon and Shelby, let's go Wolverines. Alfred says Council wins. Joel says, what a cool season from Shoshone. After their first win, we were all put on notice, and Shoshone kept winning. For sure. Now, I will say the one thing, Garden Valley earlier this season, Scott, they were playing like 5 or 6 QBs like per game. Like that's just not, it's very unusual. They played 4 different quarterbacks in that game against Council. The guy they have finally settled on here for the playoffs is Maddox Miller. In that first matchup with Council, 0 for 1 passing. So Council didn't really see this guy a lot. Could that tilt things in Garden Valley's direction? I don't know.
No, it's not. It's not. You can put anybody back there, put them in pistol formation, hand it off, run wing tee, whatever it is. It doesn't matter who it is. You put your best runner back there so you can have like a triple threat, But, the thing I like about this Council team is they're pretty young. They don't have a whole lot of seniors on the roster. And, so Garden Valley, yeah, they do have their work cut out for them because Council is, like you said, a really good football team with one loss early in the season to Cami, which we just got done touting about how good they were. So Garden Valley is going to have to really get it together. And granted, they've had a great season, a couple of losses, and they were back-to-back losses in the middle of the season. One to Council, one to Tri-Valley. So it doesn't matter who you put back there. Council is too good, I think.
Okay. Well, guys, we will wrap it up there with the 1A conversation. I will one more comment here in the chat. We love when players or coaches are on watching live. Paul, you gave this guy a shout out from Wallace. Reese Williams, go Miners, standout offensive guard and defensive end for Wallace High School.
60 tackles on the year, I think. Yeah, defensive stud. I like it.
Yeah. Back when I played for Jerome back in like 1927, we won 2 state championships in football back to back. The first team that we played was Wallace.
Nice.
And that was back if that tells you something, because back then we were the same classification. Yeah, Wallace and Jerome back in the day.
Classification, but you still play the same as a 1A team.
You just shut your mouth.
Nothing Wallace.
Every time I hear Wallace, I always think that, man, that we used to be the same. And
they have a swim team. They have a swim team in Wallace. How cool is that?
It's probably cold, not cool.
They practiced in the washed out silver mines, actually. Silver mines where they practice.
Yeah. Nice.
I will say, guys, I was at Sather Field in Silverton, which is like 1 mile west of Wallace. That's where the football field is in Silverton. Only football field I've seen in Idaho that still has the wooden bleachers. I love it.
Nice. What a cool area up there. That's for dang sure. Yeah. Very cool area.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Well, thanks to everybody who tuned in live to, once again, a very long edition of Gem State Game Day. Guess what? Next week's show is going to be a lot shorter because there's going to be half the matchups to talk about. So as the field winnows, so will the runtime on this production.
You said that last week. Yeah,
yeah, you did. We're going to have like this cane that comes in from the side and just pulls us off.
Well, guys, it is the season of empty campaign promises, but after tomorrow night, that's all finished up. So thanks for everyone for being with us on a Monday night edition. If you haven't voted, go vote tomorrow. All kidding aside, it's one of the biggest responsibilities we have as citizens. Doesn't even matter who you're voting for. Just go out and make your voice heard. Make your vote count. That's the important thing. And we will. Oh, go ahead.
Is your dog going to vote too?
I don't know. Yeah, come on. Yeah. She's not dead, so she can't vote Democrat.
Oh, yeah.
She's Democrat, yeah.
And Lucas just got us flagged on YouTube. Thanks, Lucas.
Way to go.
See, I've been walking that line subtly all night, and then Lucas came in and with a grenade and just blew it up. So
what happens when you get me on the air for 2 hours?
That's true. I feel like Joe Rogan over here, guys. Again, I'm very sorry, but next week it'll be a lot shorter. I promise. I'm Brandon Bainey, and I approve this message. So, all right, for Lucas Gebhardt and Paul Kingsbury and Scott Burton, I'm Brandon Bainey. Enjoy the competition this week and weekend, everybody. We'll see you back here next week for the semifinal edition next Tuesday night of Gem State Game Day here on IdahoSports.com.